This is Help, I'm a Contractor podcast. Hi, I'm Seth Lewis. I am a blue-collar business coach. Finally, someone that understands what contractors actually go through. My goal and vision is to connect business owners with knowledge while tackling some of the industry's toughest challenges. Please subscribe to my content and let's support each other to create awareness for our industry. Check out what I have going on at www.bluecollarbusinesscoach.net. Check out my book that has helped business owners across the country change their business and their life. But for now, it's time for the show. Let's get it. Today on the show, I'm really excited. I have Jeremy Begley talking about low load buildings and high performance buildings. He's passionate about the green industry buildings and constructions. Can't wait to have him on the show and talk about it. So welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hey, Seth, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. It's a great topic. It's something that there's this push for green energy space. You hear it in the news, you hear it, all around. So tell us, where you're from. I see the Cincinnati hat, so we'll have to talk about that a little bit. That'll be
couldn't help but wear that.
Yeah. I love that. Where you're from, what you're involved in. How'd you get involved in the construction and your passion there? Where'd that come from? So a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where our business is based out of. Our home office is Cincinnati, Ohio. So I lived there 45 years. So hence the Bengals hat and, excited about seeing them in a Super Bowl first time in my adult life and all that stuff. So, I can't say enough about the excitement that surrounded the past month here for me. But that being said, I live in Knoxville, Tennessee for the past 2 years, where we recently opened a second branch, so to speak, of our business. Even though it's mostly online, we're now doing work from 2 locations. So I guess that qualifies as a second branch, more or less. I got into let me start here. I was in the food, beverage, and service industry for about 15 years, bartending and managing restaurants, things like that. I went back to school right before the financial crisis happened in 2007, 2008. When it actually crashed, I was actually still in school, going to a local community college, Cincinnati State Technical College. The degree track that I was taking there was environmental engineering. But I got invited to go to a conference right after Obama got sworn in office. It was like his first couple months in office. There was this big convention on climate change out in Washington, D.C. About 19,000 people attended it from across the nation, and they had all these different degree tracks about green this, green that, mountaintop removal, coal, anything to do that is even remotely connected to climate change was discussed there. And one of the tracks that you could take, which was the track I ended up taking, was called What is a Green Job? And so it's funny, I teach a class, I do a little class, energy conservation and cleanup class for Cincinnati State. Still, I do an online presentation for them that just takes up one of their class blocks. And I have to take the students back to that time because it was totally different. Like, green is everywhere now. It's a buzzword that you hear. It's an industry. It's a real thing. When I got into it back then, there was none of that. Like, it was just becoming a industry. It was not thought of as a viable product that you can make money off of. They were really trying to start promoting it. And so that's the conference track. What is a Green Job was hosted by Van Jones, who he's big in the green industry. He does a lot of nonprofit work in low-income neighborhoods, trying to bring urban gardens and get kids interested in working in the green industry and stuff like that. But he was at that time the environmental director for the Obama administration. That was short-lived. Some political stuff happened and they ended up ousting him from office or something like that. But he was the keynote speaker there. And so the thing he was talked about was basically creating a green job inside a job that already exists. And it's something that stuck with me to sort of describe how this industry even came about. And so he said, you could have a construction company that all their waste stream goes to like one place. They're dumping it just in the city dump or wherever they dump it at. And then all of a sudden they decide they want to be a little more environmentally sound. And so they're going to start recycling some of it, reclaiming some of it, doing all these different things to diversify their waste stream and really try to make it smaller than what it is. And as soon as they do that, then they need people to track the waste. They need people to drive the trucks. They need people to make sure that it gets to the correct places and things like that. So they've essentially created a green job inside a job that already exists. And I think that is really the way this industry has blossomed over the years, because it's people just thinking about doing stuff a little bit differently than they typically have to try to either be more friendly to the environment, create an economy that is a little more sustainable, because most things that you do environmentally also directly have some kind of payback attached to them, or I should say payback's a little bit of a better description. Like, you're going to reduce your usage of some kind of fuel or some kind of like in the instance I just used, the example I just used, like reclaiming the waste, then you're going to be able to reuse that, or it's going to get recycled somewhere. So, and usually when you recycle, you get a little bit of money back from that, from the recycling plant. So there's always some kind of financial benefit that's a secondary benefit to the thing that you're doing. And that is what got me interested in it. And that, and the fact that I was looking for a career change anyway. And he started talking about, hey, the president's got this plan. He's going to, like, you got to remember at that time, the economy had just crashed. Like, everybody was like, how's this guy going to get us back to working and get us back to normal? And like, his big thing was, I'm going to do all this environmental stuff that's going to create all these jobs, infrastructure and environment. And that's going to simultaneously save people money, help the environment, and put people back to work. And so like, he had a plan. They called it the Yellow Brick Road Plan at the time, but it ended up being the Recovery and Reinvestment Act that was like a $60 billion or $600 billion infusion into the economy. But the main thing that they talked about there was, one particular part of it was they were going to take and fix people's homes, basically like take the energy usage, reduce it in people's homes by going in, assessing how they were using and losing energy, and then send a team in to install energy conservation measures. And he said, hey, if you guys want to get a jump on this, the organization that we're going to use is a third-party organization called BPI, Building Performance Institute. And we're going to use those guys to be sort of the third-party training facilitators, and also manage the workforce that goes out into the community. And so he's like, if you want to get in on that, go ahead and look that up and find out about those guys. So when I got back to the hotel that night, there was a program administrator from Cincinnati State that went with us. Like, they sent 4 students and a program administrator, and it happened to be the guy that ran the renewable energy program at Cincinnati State that went with us. And even though that wasn't the degree track that I was in, one of the things he wanted to do was like sit around campfire style, basically, in the hotel room, and what'd you learn each day? And so I was, telling him about the green jobs thing and the BPI, and he's like, I want to bring that back to the college. He's like, that sounds like something that fits into my program. I want to bring it back to the college. I want to talk to you when we get back, into Cincinnati, and really see what we can do. So he did. He called me in the office, and we started looking up where we could get that training at, where he could get a hold of the curriculum, things like that. Like, we found it in one place out in Indiana. There was a home inspection company, and their name was Sherlock Holmes, like, play on Holmes. And they're like, they advertised on their website or whatever, I forget how we found it, but some ad they had said they did the BPI training. So we called them, we said, hey, do you guys offer this? What's it all about? They said, look, we offer it, but we've never actually implemented it. Nobody's ever once called us and asked us to train them to do this stuff. Like, we have the curriculum. So Larry's like, hey, can you send the curriculum over to me for me to take a look at? So he did, and he sent it up the flagpole to the education board, or accreditation board is what it is. Try to get it as an accredited course for 4 credit hours, like a normal course. And they're like, nah, there's not enough information there. It doesn't really fit. And so Cincinnati State had a separate campus up the street. It was called their Workforce Development Center. And what they did is they actually created 40-hour courses for local industries like Christ Hospital, Procter and Gamble, GE, anybody that needed a training course put together, they would give them the raw curriculum and they would say, turn this into something we can teach to somebody to further them in our company. And so that was like their sole purpose. That's what they lived off of up there. And so he sent it up there to the guy that ran that campus, like, can you turn this into a course? And they're like, yes, we can. And so they did it. And he offered it to me and a bunch of other students at a really discounted rate to be the first ones to go through it and just try it out. So I ended up being like the first person in the whole entire Cincinnati market that was not in weatherization that actually had a energy audit certification, which ended up being called the building analyst. BA is what they called it, building analyst. And you learn enough to be dangerous or whatever to go out and play around in the houses and try to figure it out. Well, at that time, I got really excited about it. They give you this list at the end of it. And so Cincinnati State's a co-op thing, but because the economy was so messed up, there were no co-ops available. Like, you could not get a co-op to save your life. So they're like, if the way they did it, like, you needed a certain amount of co-op hours to even graduate. So they're like, you go find your own co-op. Like, we can't find you one, but if you can find find somebody to hire you or work for free or whatever, because they wanted you to be paid, like that was their policy, but they waived that. You could go work for free in the co-op situation because of the way the economy was. So this list is like insulators, HVAC contractors, anybody that has anything to do with the energy in a house, windows, stuff like that. They're like, these people should want you to be an energy auditor. They should want this service or whatever. So like, I take it around all these different organizations, companies that are on this piece of paper, and they're like, oh, that green stuff, it's never going to be anything. Energy, that president's crazy. That stuff's never going to work. Like, I heard every excuse in the book about why it wasn't great or why it would never be anything. And so, I happened to be working at a restaurant with a kid who had just graduated graphics as a graphic designer. And he's like, started encouraging me to he's like, if you really want to do it yourself. He's like, look, I need to build a portfolio. I will create you a website. I will create you a logo. Like, I'll give you everything you need from that aspect to get started. He's like, and all you got to do is let me put it in my portfolio for whenever this economy gets started up again. I have something in there. I'm trying to, figure out how I'm going to build a portfolio without anybody being able to pay for anything. So I'll do it for free. So he did. He created the logo. I took a business course at Cincinnati State as an elective at that time. And I threw out my shingle, and, I also got a little Twitter account going. That was one of the things that had just came around too. Like, it was 2008. Like, there was 5 people on Twitter, literally. Like, it was not even anything like it was right now. Like, people were just figuring it out. And at that conference that I was at, they had Twitter was there, and like, they had these giant screens set up in front of every conference session that filled up. So like, some of them, the way the thing went is like, the ones that were popular were super popular. Everybody wanted to get in them. And then there were all the other ones. And then the ones that you couldn't get in, it was completely filled. So like, Twitter did a really smart thing. They were like, put up these big screens. They had a basket of phones. They were BlackBerries at the time. That's what everybody was using. And as you walked in, they handed you one. And they said, here, I'm going to get you signed up real quick for this thing called Twitter. Here's the 5-minute explanation of what it is. Here's how to use it. And all we want you to do is tweet what you're seeing. Like, and they didn't call it tweet. They're like, in 150 characters or less, tell us what you're seeing as rapidly as you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but that, and so a really cool thing having like these screens are outside of the conferences, and you could see like in a Twitter stream, boom, 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 what's going on in the sessions that you couldn't get into, and everybody's gathered around these screens out in front of there. So that stuck with me too. Like, I was like, wow, that's cool. But I signed up for it, then I forgot about it. I went through, everything. And then I'm like, yeah, I got this Twitter thing. I might as well, use it or whatever. So like, one of the things BPI told you is like, to get your business going, if you're going to do this as a business, go out and do energy audits for free. Like, pick your neighbors, pick your relatives, pick anybody, and go promote your business that way. Because once they see the value of it, they're going to tell somebody else, and that person's going to want to pay for it. And so I'm like, sounds good to me. So in my free time, I did 2 things. One, I tried to get, like, it's about $10,000 startup cost and equipment and things like that you need to get going. So I was trying to get financing through banks, and obviously, like, they're not lending money to anybody at this point in time, let alone some kid, and not kid, I was an adult, but some adult in college that, is talking about something they never heard of before. And they're like, yeah, you're not getting money for that. So I went to my family and different people and got some private financing and got the money that I needed for the equipment. And I just started doing a thing. Like, going into homes, hooking up. They have this instrument called a blower door that actually has a big fan that goes on the front door. It sucks all the air out of the house and lets it filter back in at the same exact time. It measures air infiltration and exfiltration in the house, which is one of the main ways homes lose money, which is now why homes are all getting so tight, and then mechanical ventilation is getting put into them, because they just found that as you tighten the home up and you stop that external pressure on the home and leaving it subject to Mother Nature, it's going to save a ton of money in the house. It makes the house work better. The HVAC system can be smaller, things like that. So started doing that. The mayor ended up seeing it. Mayor of Cincinnati ended up seeing it. Like, and Cincinnati had this thing I never knew existed. It's called the Green Cincinnati Initiative. His office was really big on it. So he his office called me up and was like, hey, this is the mayor's office. He wants you to come in and talk to him about these energy audits he's seen you doing on Twitter. That's where the Twitter story comes in. Like, I was putting it on Twitter, and that was the only people using Twitter at the time were like few celebrities here and there just starting to understand what it was, and it had been used as a political campaigning tool. Like, that's the main purpose of it at that point in time. Obama, if you go back and research, you'll see he's like the first president known for using Twitter to campaign, and he famously said we never used Twitter when asked about it, but his campaign had been using it the whole time. So like, those were the people on politicians and news and things like that. And so like the mayor's like come into my office, and so he's like asking me would I do an energy audit on the news for his at his parents' house. He lived in a condo, so he wanted me to do it out at his parents' house. I'm like, sure, I will. Why not? You know, why wouldn't I? So I did that, and that's the first real business like we got. As soon as that story went out, like, people were calling, and they were just, you know, it's mostly people that were like leaning towards the green thing anyway, and they were curious about what it was. They're like, come do that in my house. I want you, do one of those. So got a bunch of little small business that way. At the same time, there was a nonprofit organization, or a guy named Andy Holhauser, who was starting a nonprofit called the Greater Cincinnati Energy Alliance. And he raised $1 million in a down economy to actually go into people's homes and do energy audits. And on the back.
Thanks for listening to the show. I specialize in working with contractors and service business owners just like you. If you are your business and you're looking to do less, not more, if you have a great product or service but deals aren't closing the way that you want, maybe you've grown so much and operationally it's been a mess. Maybe it's gaining back more time, better organization, and reducing stress. You know there's a better way to running your business. It's on you to take the first step. It's time. I can help. Go to www.bluecollarbusinesscoach.net and let's start by mapping out your current business versus what you want.
And on the back end, send in a construction crew. And what it was is like, the energy audit was $400. He would only charge the homeowner $50, and then they paid the balance to the contractor that did the energy audit. And then you'd had to have a crew that knew how to implement the recommendations or the energy conservation measures that were recommended by the energy audit, come in and install them. And then they got $6,000, 50% up to $6,000 off the cost of the upgrades to their home. So he wrote this with BPI as you had to be BPI certified to do the energy audits. Well, I was the only person in the whole area BPI certified because I had went out and, got that certification. So like he found me and he's like, hey, I hear you want to work. I got a lot of work and nobody to do it. So like we started working, and almost instantly we had a truck on the road. I had another energy auditor working for me. Things just really started to take off. And not too long after that, the ARA funds kicked in from the government, and they basically, it was like a year in or something like that, and they were one of the grants that you could write for in the ARA funds was the same exact thing he had already created in Cincinnati. In the greater Cincinnati area was the same exact type of program with the energy audits up front and doing the work on the back. And so he took a portion of the money that he had got, hired a grant writer. He ended up getting the third biggest award in the country for that type of work, like $17 million to come to the greater Cincinnati area to do the energy audit. So then stuff really blew up. Like every Tom, Dick, and Harry that told me no in the beginning wanted to get involved. Like HVAC contractors and insulators were beating down the door to get BPI certified. They had to turn the Cincinnati State campus almost solely into a certifying campus to like be able to run these guys through and get them certified in enough time to like work in the grant program. And so that's where I got my feet wet in the industry. I learned a ton, trial by fire, just going into people's homes and doing energy audits, figuring out where they needed to have air sealing in their attic. Like we get in their attics and dig through the insulation and find top plates that need sealed up. And there's a ton of different things that go into that, as far as making sure that you're doing it the right way and tightening the house up and then putting new insulation in, re-specifying HVAC equipment. I hired a guy to work for me that was a licensed HVAC contractor, and that's how I got introduced to what I'm actually doing now, was doing the design, like the load calculations on HVAC systems and things like that properly. And that was a big, I went through a bunch of trial by fire with that and having to replace people's equipment because it wasn't sized right. And, just a big learning experience during all that time. And then as the grant program dwindled down, so did my business, because most of my business was based on people trying to get the grant money, and the people that normally would need the services that we provided, they're calling, every day they're calling the HVAC contractors. Like in everyday life, if you have a comfort problem, if you have an energy, if you're using too much energy in your house, if what I'm trying to say is if your utility bills are higher than you think they are, things like that, like the first person that gets that call is the HVAC company. Like they are the guys, the reactive people that people know and trust, and like, hey, this guy can come in and make my house more comfortable, or he can tell me why. But one of the problems you run into with that is like and when you have a hammer, everything's a nail. Like the HVAC guy is going to tell you need new HVAC. If you call the window guy, he's going to tell you you need new windows. If you call the insulation guy, it's automatically an insulation problem. So you need somebody that really can be objective about it and look at it from a third-party perspective. So a lot of these HVAC companies started seeing that business model working for them, and one of them made me an offer. They were like, hey, right when, and it was perfect timing for me, like right when my sales were dwindling down and I was trying to figure out how to generate new business, they basically were like, hey, let us buy your assets, come and work for us for a couple of years, help us get this up and going in our own company. So I did that, took a job with it, sold them all the assets separately. Like they bought the truck separately, they bought the Twitter account for actually surprising amount of money because of how established it was and how many followers it had. That was the first time I got introduced to that particular chunk of business where I was like, wow, that's a thing. Like you could really just grow a Twitter account, and if it has enough followers, somebody's going to buy it from you, so like they bought that as a separate asset from the company. And so I did pretty well with that transfer and went and worked for them for a couple years, which got me a ton of experience in the HVAC business, got me introduced to the commercial test and balance world, and a bunch of experience that I didn't have before. And then I started, after that contract was up, I went out on my own. I opened another little company, and I was doing consulting work, and also got introduced to the new construction side. There's a something called the HERS score, which is home energy score, which basically is a score of 0 to 100 that tells you, it rates the home as an asset, an energy asset, and just tells you how efficient it is or isn't. And it's what most of real estate is starting to be based on. They're starting to put that score on a lot of homes. And also too, like if you wanted to go net zero, that's what the net zero thing is based on, like 0 and below. 0, your net neutral, and then anything below, you're actually sending energy back to the grid in some way, shape, or form. And so and new construction in Cincinnati, they had another program that was going on the whole entire time. Cincinnati's a really green market. Like it's a hidden gem when it comes to the green market. There's on the new construction side, they had LEED for homes, and LEED stands for leadership in energy and environmental design. And it typically is known as a commercial program, but there is a LEED for home side of it that's growing, getting bigger and bigger. And in Cincinnati, they always had a problem in downtown Cincinnati getting people to come in and build, and it's typical urban problem where like nobody wanted anything to do with it until there's money involved. And so they created a construction tax abatement where if you rehab the property, you got a little 7-year tax abatement up to $100,000 or something like that for the improved amount on the property. Well, when Mayor Mallory's office came in to play, they actually were like, hey, we're going to really up the ante on this thing. And if you build to the LEED standard, and LEED has different levels, it starts out at certified, then you have silver, gold, and platinum. So depending on how environmentally sound you want to be, there's different levels of certification, and they attached levels of tax abatement to each one of those levels of certification. So as you got it more environmentally sound, the more abatement you got, and it got to be crazy. Like if you build a platinum house, you could get up to $1 million uncapped on the year's tax abatement. So then people were like, what the hell's going on down here? Like the builders started getting, hip to it or whatever. And so then the whole entire revitalization of downtown Cincinnati was a result of that tax abatement. Like everything, the OTR chain, like the whole thing, it's way different than it was 10, 15 years ago down there now, and so that, and also you got to attribute it to the whole urbanization trend that's been going on in all, every community across the country. Chicago, there's a lot of different places you can look at that followed the same trend, but the driver for it behind the scenes was definitely the tax abatement. People without that incentive, like they were getting a quarter to double the house that they could build, because you can then use that abatement as a financing mechanism to build a bigger house, basically, because they know it's coming back in for sure. You don't have to pay that anymore. So like then you got millionaires and people like that building their dream house in downtown Cincinnati or inside to the Cincinnati limits. So it really changed the game. And so there was a guy down there, a company down there called Green Building Consulting, and a lady named Barb Yankee, who was like one of the first people to ever do LEED for home assessments, and she was a HERS rater for a long time, which is the people that come in and do the asset rating on the home. You like do basically the same thing we were doing on existing construction, on new construction, like doing a blower door test, making sure the insulation is aligned, making sure the HVAC system is designed to the correct size and things like that, and other stuff too, like making sure the durability of the building to a certain extent is correct, like the exterior sheathing is a certain thickness, and just different things like that. And then so that's basically the energy piece. And then LEED takes that. You got to have a certain HERS score inside the LEED program. And then there's a million other things that are just have to do with environmental stewardship that are attached to the LEED process, like water reclamation. Like what are you doing with the water in your house? Making sure your downspouts go somewhere other than out into the street, and stuff like that. Making sure that the indoor air quality of the home is correct, making sure you have enough the proper amount of ventilation in the home, making sure that the humidity is controlled in the home, like a bunch of things that are way beyond the energy piece that just go into building a good home. And then there's things that have directly related to environmental stewardship too, like how far did you have to go to get the building materials? Where are those coming from? Are they within 500 miles? Is it reclaimed material? Is it recycled material? And then some of the stuff is prerequisites to make it a beyond code program. And then a lot of the other stuff you got points for, where you could build up to those different levels of certification. And so I got certified to do that. And I started talking to those guys, Green Building Consulting, and they start subbing me work out. So as part of my consulting service, I grew it into the HERS ratings, the LEED part of it. And then I started realizing that a lot of the HVAC contractors just did not have the ability to do the paperwork that's required to participate in the program. They did not have the ability to correctly design the systems, and they were running into a lot of problems putting oversized systems in houses that just didn't need it. So they would do this thing called short cycle in the summertime, where the air conditioner will satisfy the thermostat super fast, but it doesn't run long enough to actually dehumidify the air. So then they're getting moisture problems throughout, little spotting in the house and, raining in the house and things like that. So I started learning how to design the equipment myself, and then I started offering that as a service, and it started really taking off. And so Paul Yankee, the guy who owns Green Building Consulting, which they're in about 14 states, like they're based in downtown Cincinnati, but they have a presence in about 14 states. They have offices in two actual offices, remote offices in 2 states outside of Ohio. So they're a bigger, a mid-sized, bigger company when it comes to doing ratings. They service certainly the Midwest single family market, probably bigger than any other company out there. And so he came to me and he said, look, man, what you're doing with the HVAC design stuff, I think can be a business all on its own, and I like to partner with you and go into business. And so we ended up creating HVAC Design Partners, and that's how I got to where I am today. We specialize in high HVAC design for high performance buildings, mostly custom residential and light commercial buildings. And then we've recently got into, like, when we created it with the business model in mind of being able to do the design on the front end, then come back and do the commissioning on the back end. Cause that's another piece of, like, the HVAC industry is real good at putting the boxes in and putting the ductwork in, getting it ran and all that. And if you tell them how tight it needs to be, they can do that. But the startup side is really lacking, like, especially in a high performance home, there's so many pieces of it that have to work together. The dehumidification, the humidification, the HVAC system itself, the ventilation, and all need to be set at a certain rate and communicate that stuff. If it doesn't get set up on the back end after, even if you have a really good design on the front end, if the system is not commissioned properly on the back end, it's going to work, and either the design's going to get blamed or the HVAC contractor is going to get blamed. And it may not need to fall in either of those places. It just may need to be fine-tuned to work the way it was really intended to work. So recently we've been selling packages where we'll do the design and we'll do the commissioning, and all the guy has to do is put the box in and the ductwork the way it's specified, and it's ended up working pretty well for us.
Yeah, that's a great introduction. A lot of great stuff there, in your journey and what you're doing. Why is it important for these zero energy or getting it started right? You say performance, high performing or low load and high performing buildings. Why? For what? What is it? There's probably two types of people out there that you run into. People that think this is very important, and people that say, going back to your original thing when it started, this is something that is, hoopla still, whatever. We know, it. So when you think about that, I guess my question is, when you look at this, I think it would be helpful to share the impact. So if you have a high performing home, is it just for somebody that's rich, has a lot of money, and it makes them feel good? What's it actually doing?
It's a great question. And so it's one of my actually favorite topics to talk about. So here's the thing that happened. This industry got a black eye because it was originally promoted as energy efficiency and saving money. And that was the main point of it, was to save the environment and save the climate. Not everybody believes in that, and I don't care if you do or don't. It really doesn't matter to me. And a lot of people don't buy into that, but that is the way the thing got promoted in the beginning. So a lot of the benefits of it really got passed over, and a lot of the synergies. And here's what I mean by that. If you actually build the home correctly from a performance standpoint, it is going to be safer, it's going to be healthier, and it's going to be more comfortable. And by default, you're going to save energy. Those things have synergies together. Those three things: comfort, safety, and energy, all three synergistically affect each other inside a home. Like, there's not one of them that is going to be affected without the other two being affected either negatively or positively. Now, if you go into a home and you don't know what you're doing and your pure intent is to save energy, you definitely could cause a health problem in the home. You might seal it up too tight and not put enough ventilation in it. You could have a garage that's directly connected to a home and tighten the whole home up, but not tighten the wall between the home and the garage. And all of a sudden you got CO pulling in from the garage into the house. And a lot of times CO poisoning, people think about instant death when they think about CO poisoning, but a lot of times, 90% of the time, people experience CO poisoning at low levels and don't even know they're experiencing it because of the fact that they have a cold. It seems like a cold or a stomach virus or something like that. Like, those symptoms are the same exact symptoms that you get when you have CO poisoning. And I have been in houses, and this is one of the great things about I'll take it from the retrofit, the existing building side for a minute, like fixing those homes. Some of the more satisfying experiences that I've had is when people have had health issues and we've been able to go into their home and fix their home and eliminate those health issues. Like, for instance, I had a allergist, a doctor who was an allergist, and he worked in that industry, and his kids had allergies, and they were getting shots every month, like, and they hated it, and they would cry, and like it was a bad experience for them. And he's like, by the time he got to me, he's like, listen, I have tried everything that I can imagine to fix these kids' allergies. Like, and they, it breaks our heart every time we have to take them to the hospital or take them to the doctor because they're having a bad allergy attack or they have to get shots, things like that. And he's like, I went to a symposium the other day and they were talking about sick building syndrome and the way that a building can affect the person's health that's living in it, and you guys are the only ones that I can find that even remotely do anything like that. Can you help us? And I said, I can certainly try. And so we came out and we did an inspection on their home, and it was a newer home. Like, these people are doctors, like, they're well off, like they lived in a nice big home, but they had the same problems that a lot of older homes have, because the construction was not done up the way that it should have been. The construction process wasn't monitored because nobody's really thinking that way in the typical construction process up until very recently. And so, it's a newer age home. I would say probably built in 2014 or 15, something like that. It had just been built when we went in, like it was new, like really new. And so we went in there and I did a blower door test, and I had an IR camera that's sort of like, when we go into a house and we're evaluating it from that standpoint, like we use the blower door to enhance the air leakage that's coming in. Like it'll normalize it so that it basically simulates a 20-mile-an-hour breeze outside the home at a consistent rate, so that the exchange is constant and consistent. And so then we can take an IR camera and we go around and look in the house and see where that leakage is coming in. And so, like in the kids' rooms, the attic's directly connected to the kids' rooms, and so it's pulling all that air in. And what's up in the attic? Dirt, grime, mouse poop, stuff like that, like all kinds of stuff that's not great for you at all. And so from that aspect, that's just getting pulled into their room, a big exchange all the time. And then I put a similar type of pressure test on the duct system that we do to see how tight the duct system is or isn't. Ducts are running through the attic, and they're leaky. And so it's even worse with a duct system because it's constantly getting, as soon as the duct system kicks on, it's starts sucking, it's pressurized. And so, because it's going to push air through the house. And if you got ducts in like a crawl space or an attic and they're not sealed up correctly, sucks that stuff in every time, distributes it through the house, and that's happening all the time in homes all across America. And so, like, we went in and we evaluated everything and we sealed it all up, made sure they had the correct ventilation, put some HEPA filtration in on their systems and things like that. The guy called me back, a couple months later. He said, my kids haven't went to the doctor once. We've been able to stop the shots. They don't have to be on the allergy shots anymore. He's like, I thought it was the area we lived in. We moved from outside. Like, I didn't know what to do about it. And he was like, I am so happy that I found you. I cannot tell you guys enough how much we appreciate what you did to our home. So, that's one situation. Another situation is I had these people in a very nice neighborhood bought an old, beautiful old home, and they were from Russia, or the guy was from America, his wife was from Russia. And she basically was like, I'm used to the cold, but I can't even cook in my kitchen. Like, I love to cook, and in the wintertime, I can't stand in my kitchen and cook. It's so cold. We've had everybody that we know to come out here and look at our house and figure out what's going on. And, the HVAC guys have put 3 different systems in. We've had all brand new windows put on. Like, we don't know what the heck is going on. Like, can you help us? And so we did an evaluation, and looking at the house, I could sort of already know what was going to, just from experience, what it was going to be. But like, so these old homes, they have these false roofs that come out over top of different spaces and stuff like that. Well, that was all, the third floor was like completely uninsulated because it's like a walk-up attic, and then you got this whole big third floor. And traditionally back then they didn't use insulation because nobody cared about energy costs. And if you needed you just got a bigger boiler or whatever and turned it up until it got warm enough for you. And if there was an area of the house you couldn't use at a certain time, people got conditioned. That's one of the things I hear all the time. Well, we just don't go in there in the wintertime, or we just don't go up there in the summertime. And I'll say, do you know how absurd that sounds? You're telling me that your house, there's certain areas of your house that you accept that you can't use at certain times a year because it's not comfortable. Like, that just doesn't sit well with me. And so this particular situation, like, they needed the whole entire attic insulated. But more than that, there's a space where we had to cut the knee wall out and go back in that was directly over that kitchen, and we completely sealed it up all around. Did that. They didn't even have to change their HVAC equipment. Just from everything that we sealed up in the house and put insulation in, made that particular room work that much better. Where she was like, called us, it had us come over and is literally in tears telling us how much she appreciated what we did, because she could use her kitchen and how she's able to cook her husband the dinner that she's always wanted to cook and everything like that. So like, the point of saying all of that is what you get with a high performance home. If the construction process is monitored properly and everything is done the way that it should be done, which that's a big word right there, should be done, and encompasses a lot. And you pay attention to the small details that you can't see, then you're going to have a house that is going to be super comfortable, super healthy, and also super efficient to live in. And the efficiency and the thing that does to the environment, as far as from an emotional standpoint, is the least of what you get out of building a house the correct way like that.
I think there's, again, a lot of great information. I love the 3 points of comfort, safety, and energy. I love the way that you connected the health side of things, because people, I mean, great story, a doctor, helping other people. But I always use this example of, like, sometimes a doctor, you can't operate on yourself. Now, this is not the same thing, but it's kind of like that, where you're trying to solve health issues. You solve health issues for everybody else. And here you have a health issue right in your own house that you can't solve. And it was something that was outside of your scope. So I want to tie that to, being a business owner, and a lot of people that, listen, or if you're having challenges and you're an expert in what you do, the trade, the specific thing, you're a doctor, but to have that outside perspective, to have somebody like you come in and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. It was able to solve problems that the expert, the doctor, couldn't even fix. I think that's really, really powerful example. So the other thing that I think, when you were sharing, is the idea that when you have all these new things that come out, green energy way back when you have Twitter, the other thing I'd like to encourage people that are listening to is get involved in something new. Get involved in that latest thing. What is it? In the construction industry, there's stuff, you talk about, if I go outside the construction industry, you have, cryptocurrency, you have NFTs, you have all these different things that everybody looks at that Twitter and says, Twitter is not going anywhere, or it's nothing, it's not going to be around. We're not going to use it. So I just want to pull people in, because even though we're talking about green energy, your story started out about how it was this new thing. It was something that nobody was really talking about. It was looked down upon. It was maybe made fun of. It was said, no, that's not something. But I think that's important to a key takeaway in this episode is to explore new things, to explore things, because it's really changed your career. It's given you a lot of opportunities. I mean, you're able to sell your Twitter, business, just speak from connections and having it build up. So don't underestimate how powerful it is to get in something on the ground up. Really, really powerful. Just want to wrap up, want to just ask a couple quick hitters. One, obviously, where they can find you and your business, encouraging people to, reach out, reach out to you if they're in your local area, or find somebody in your local area that can do this. So, where they can find your business. And then I'll ask a couple quick hitters just to wrap up the session.
Sure. So we're on all the socials. My most active account is probably LinkedIn. So you can find us HVAC Design Partners at LinkedIn, HVAC Design Partners on Facebook. We're on Twitter, And most recently, we're going to start a YouTube channel here shortly as well. It's not up and running yet, but you can find us any of those places, or you can come directly to our website, HVAC Design Partners.com, and we have a form on there you can fill out. We have live chat. You can chat with us directly about any problem that you may have. So any way you want to reach out, you can probably find us.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a lot of great points. I mean, even with like the garage not sealing properly and bringing air in, we don't think about our homes in this way and how the challenges it can create. So I would reach out to, Jeremy and his team, get some advice, connect, see if they can help you if they're in your area, or maybe he can point you in the right direction. A couple quick things just to wrap up. First thing that you think of, the construction industry would be better
if they paid more attention to the small things, attention to detail. One of the I won't say, I don't want to like saying problems, but one of my gripes sometimes with the construction industry is everything is so value engineered these days that they've got away from what quality is. And it's funny that now a good home is called a custom home. That's one thing that always cracks me up. Like, if you want a good home, you got to get a custom home, or else you're getting some cookie cutter thing that everybody else got. So like, I talk to guys who are tradesmen for their life. I've had so many different deep conversations. Like, the older guys are like, man, I don't know how we got here. Like, when I started out, we really cared about what we did, and it wasn't all about the bottom line. It was about building somebody a home that could last forever. And if we could get back to that even a little bit, I think the construction industry would be a lot better.
Yeah, we did a episode that was pretty good about what is quality, and are we building our best quality ever? And it was a really interesting question, a great episode. And the answer was no. But I mean, that's for another time, another place. I can build a blank in my sleep.
Oh, that's a funny one. I could build a energy efficient home in my sleep.
Love it. Biggest challenge is getting people to understand what we do and see the value in it. Just like the questions that you asked before about why should we care about a high performance home? Why are we being forced to do all this? The code, one thing we didn't talk about a lot is code is going this way. And a lot of our business now is coming from just people that need design and code build homes, because they're getting forced into it in their municipalities. So like, if we could really help people understand the value behind what we do and get away from the climate conversation so much, I think that's a big value. Biggest skill
that I have is evaluating a home and telling you how to make it more comfortable.
Last thing you got on Amazon?
This hat. No, I'm kidding. Not this hat. The last thing I got on Amazon is probably one of these pops behind me. I collect those little pops. So like, probably one of those. I can't tell you for sure, but I would have to guess. I'd probably say it was that.
Cool. Favorite tool or brand?
My favorite tool is probably my blower door, and the brand is Retrotech.
Ford or Chevy?
I'm a Chevy guy through and through.
There you go. Never know. I want other business owners in construction to know
that if you pay attention to the energy details of the home, the things behind the scene that do not create the same emotional connection that a granite countertop has, it will actually build your business more than being able to sell the granite countertop.
I love that. Great stuff today, Jeremy. Really appreciate it. Great insight into perspective into building a green, efficient home and its values. So really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for all the insights.
No problem. I appreciate you having me. It was a great time.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Like and share with other contractors. Start studying you to